Learn what our insiders know about your home teams. Sports 1280 New Orleans.
Live at the Zurich Classic of New Orleans at the TPC Louisiana. The 19th hole. Of course, the PGA event starts tomorrow. Pro-Am is going on today. We just saw Patrick Reed come by. But, of course, busy time in New Orleans, PGA, playoff basketball, and the NFL draft. And pleased to be joined by Luke Easterling, editor of the Draft Wire at USA Today. Luke, appreciate you jumping on the show. And I'm sure after months and months and months of scouring through all this, you're probably just ready for this thing to get rolling.
Yeah, it's always an interesting range of emotions between the Christmas-like feeling of actually having it get here and also the kind of, okay, let's get there. Let's actually get past all the smoke screens and the rumors and the craziness and, actually see how this goes down. So it definitely bounces between the two this time of year.
Luke, of course, Saints country here. They're picking at number 27. Sean Payton yesterday spoke with the media after his Zurich Classic round here of the Celebrity Shootout and dropped in a bunch of needs. Said defensive line, defensive end, tight end, offensive line, linebacker. So as far as this draft, and I'm sure you've done umpteen million mock drafts, at this point, who do you think could fall to the Saints and would make the most sense at number 27 for you?
Yeah, I think that the Saints are in a good position because while they do have kind of a bunch of different needs that are just as glaring as the others, none of them are really debilitating. I feel like there's not that one position that they probably feel like at 27 or in that range, if they were to move around a little bit, there's probably not that one position where they say, man, we have to get out of the first round with a guy at this position. And that allows them the flexibility to really let the board come to them and let some of the talented players fall through the cracks. We see it every year, and especially this year with the top-heavy quarterback class. We could see 5 or 6 quarterbacks go in the first round before New Orleans picks. That's going to drive all those position players at any number of those need positions that you mentioned down the board and into their hands. So I think whether it's a linebacker like Alabama's Rashaan Evans, whether it's an edge defender, Texas San Antonio's Marcus Davenport would be interesting there. Whether it's a defensive back, if they want offensive line help, if they want a receiver, that's going to be a fun range for some guys that could be really great complements to a guy like Michael Thomas. You're talking about Christian Kirk from Texas A&M, DJ Moore from Maryland. Those guys I think would be real fun in that offense. So I think it's a good spot and a good draft the way it's stacked up for the Saints to really come away happy if they stay at that pick.
Luke, along those lines, do you see anybody that might potentially fall in, that's being projected right now, say in the top 10 or 12, that might plummet out of there, that maybe one of these quarterbacks that a lot of people are projecting as a top 10 pick that could have a precipitous fall tomorrow?
I don't think it happens to one of the quarterbacks. There are some interesting names that I feel very, very confident in as players. Maurice Hurst, the defensive lineman from Michigan, I think is one name to keep an eye on. I know that there were some concerns after he had a kind of a heart condition type of thing at the combine. That's been cleared since, but I wonder if teams are just going to even still, especially in a deep draft, the defensive line, just say, you know what, we're just going to take somebody else because we're just, we're not sure, we're not comfortable. I don't know if that's going to happen, but if it does, Maurice Hurst is a top 15 player in this draft, and if he gets to a team like New Orleans, who, like I said, has a bunch of different places they could go and needs that they could fill, that'd be a fantastic value for them if he's still on the board.
Luke Easterling, editor of the Draft Wire at USA Today Sports, joining us right here on Dunc and Holder. Luke, let's switch gears to some LSU guys, and the one guy we've been talking about for years, plural, last year for his good play as a sophomore, but this year the curious case of Arden Key. What do you make of his stock at this point, and where do you see him potentially falling this weekend?
Yeah, curious case is right. This is a guy who go back to all of our preseason mock drafts, and you see him in the top 5 pretty much across the board. So, it's going to be really interesting. This is one of the guys that the NFL teams doing behind-the-scenes research on, his character and, any off-field concerns they have. the fact that, his, weight fluctuated all over the place this season, dealt with some injuries. At his best weight and at his best, level of health, I think he's one of the better players in this draft. But, there's so many questions, so many ifs, that it's really going to come down to that background research. Some team's going to have to feel real comfortable with all that to spend a day 1, day 2 pick on him. I still think he comes off the board sometime on day 2 just because of that projection, that upside. He's got a lot of potential if a team can get him in the right situation.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you about, Luke, is the actual depth of this draft. It sounds like evaluators and scouts believe it's about, 15 to 20 players deep in the first round with really solid first-round grades, and then there's kind of a drop-off in the grade, and that the strength of this draft class is in the second and third round, that the player you get in the third round might be graded very similar to somebody at the top of the second round. Are you hearing the same things as far as how this draft shakes out?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I think there's probably a real quality top tier. It's hard. Quarterbacks are kind of their own category when it comes to this stuff. There's the rest of the class, and then the quarterbacks, I think, will always be a little bit overvalued because of their importance. But in terms of just position players, I feel like there's maybe 5 or 6 guys at the top that I'm really excited about, and then really the difference between number 10 and number 50 or 60, it's really not that big of a jump. So I think, teams are going to be more interested, especially teams without need that quarterback. They're going to really be interested in moving back from early in the first round to try to stockpile picks in that second, third, fourth round range, because I think you're going to get a lot of starting caliber players on both sides of the ball in that range.
Luke, quarterback, how many do you think go in the first round, and how high do you think, say, the 5th one goes? Because I would assume we're talking Mayfield and Rosen and Darnold and Josh Allen, and I'm going to throw Lamar Jackson in that group as well.
Yeah, I think we see 5 of the top 15 picks, and I think, that sounds crazy and that sounds like a huge percentage, but this is just a really unique quarterback class, and there's something for everybody. There's a bunch of different types of players and personalities, and it's just one of the more unique drafts at that position, and because that position is so important, teams are going to have to keep overdrafting and hoping they find somebody. So I think that Arizona at 15 is the floor for a guy like Lamar Jackson, who's probably going to be the last of those 5 off the board, even though he's the number 1 quarterback on my board. He's the guy that will kind of end that run, and I think there's going to be a sizable drop-off between him and the next guy who for most people is Mason Rudolph out of Oklahoma State. I think even he could sneak into the first round because you have a lot of teams at the bottom there, New England, Pittsburgh, who could use a rookie quarterback to kind of groom behind a veteran. So it's going to be a crazy draft. Haven't had 6 in the first round since the '83 class, but we could do it this weekend.
And also, I wanted to ask you about the potential for trades in the first round. Do you see a lot of movement because of this action with quarterbacks? Some of these teams maybe moving up to get the guy they want.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a crazy Thursday. I think we're going to see. Really, I think the floodgates start at number 5. I think the top 4 picks probably pretty solid right now, but at 5, I think is where you'll see the fun start. Denver at 5. If they don't want to take whatever the best quarterback is on the board, if they want to move down, you got teams like Buffalo. Obviously, you have a ton of picks to work with to try to move up. They've already made a little bit of a jump trading with Cincinnati to get up from the 20s to 12, and they've got plenty of picks to try to get up into the top 5, top 10. So you got teams like Tampa Bay, Indianapolis, Chicago. They already have their quarterback situation figured out. So if you're Miami, if you're Arizona, you're Baltimore, even Los Angeles, those teams, if they want to get up and get those quarterbacks, they're going to have plenty of teams willing to move back if they have a couple of those guys still on the board outside the top 5.
Luke Easterling, editor of the Draft Wire at USA Today Sports, joining us right here on Dunc Holder. Luke, one more, and we'll let you head on out of here. Let me throw another couple of LSU names and just your impressions of them going into this thing. Darius Geis, DJ Chark, and Dante Jackson.
Darius Geis, I've been at it on Twitter already this morning because I think he's just one of the best players in this class. Reminds me a lot of Marshawn Lynch as a running back. As a personality, I think he's a really fun guy that's going to be really entertaining for whatever team and fan base ends up with him. I think he's probably a more physical runner than even Saquon Barkley. I think he has some strengths that he does better than Barkley. He's a top 10 player overall on my board in that number 10 spot. And I think if we're talking about where people are projecting him now, kind of in the late first-round range, somebody's going to get a huge steal when they land him. I think he's a three-down player, going to make an instant impact. DJ Chark, I mean, that kind of size and speed and athleticism just doesn't last long on draft day. Whatever you think of his film, whatever you think of the production, obviously the quarterback issues at times at LSU, have been no secret. But, Chark has all the athletic ability to be way better of a pro than he was as a college player, depending on the quarterback situation he ends up in. So that his type of traits, if you see a team like maybe Jacksonville at 29 who could use a receiver like that, wouldn't even surprise me to see him sneak into the first round. It's because teams love guys with long arms, big, tall, fast guys. Those guys just don't last very long. So Dante Jackson, obviously, similar situation. He may not have the size, but that kind of speed, teams covet that in a big, big way. And you got a guy who's got experience at a premium position at corner in a premium conference in the SEC. I don't see him lasting very long either, especially if the team's looking for a starting nickel guy right away. I think he's tough. He can play in that slot area, and that speed's only going to help.
Luke Easterling, editor of the Draft Wire at USA Today Sports. Follow him on Twitter as well, at Luke Easterling, and look for him on Twitter defending Darius Geis. So I'm sure LSU fans will enjoy that. Hey, Luke, appreciate the insight. Great chatting with you, and gear up. Coming up, draft tomorrow night. Thanks, Luke.
Hey, anytime, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Luke Easterling, editor of the Draft Wire at USA Today. And I'm interested in the fact that he's got Geis as a top 10 player. I feel like I don't want to know if say he's a top 10 player, but I think someone is going to be thrilled when they land him. I think he is as legit as it gets as far as being a running back in the NFL. I've never swayed from that since seeing him kind of emerge at LSU.
And I agree, and along those lines, I think DJ Chark's going to have a really good NFL career. I think he'd fit in well with the Saints. I'm not saying they would take him because I don't know if wide receiver is a big need.
I've been leery to say that, but I would agree with you there, too.
Yeah, I think I could see him being an understudy to Ted Ginn Jr., and all of a sudden they move on from Ted Ginn in a year or two, and he would be a perfect fit alongside Mike Thomas. And I think whoever gets him, his best football is in front of him because he hasn't played with elite quarterbacks, let's face it, at LSU.
What?
I know that's shocking.
Are you kidding me?
But he could be a guy that all of a sudden,
Danny Etling is elite. I don't care what you say.
But can you even spell elite with Danny Etling?
I'm about to say you can't spell elite without, E.
E-L-I. I guess you can
spell.
Yeah,
you can spell elite with.
Well,
look at that.
That's not the.
We're spelling. We're not very good at spelling,
no,
by the way.
No, that's
clearly.
That's why
we know you're not.
We won't be winning any spelling bees at Dunc Holder.
No, absolutely not. So, all right, let's take one final break here on the show as we are live at the TPC Louisiana Circuit Classic of New Orleans. Currently, the Pro-Am is taking place. Tomorrow, of course, the first round of the annual PGA event, team play. It's going to be awesome. So we're here today at the 19th hole for a couple more minutes. Tomorrow we will be at the Acme tent. Friday we'll be at the Champions Club. So come on back. One more segment here on Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. Dunc Holder.